Hello, Dr. Jonathan Ellerby.
Hello, how are you?
Very good, and it's exciting to be speaking with you. I heard about so many of the listeners and people that are watching these interviews about you, so I'm really excited, especially since you just came out with a book, another book called Inspiration Deficit Disorder.
Yes,
The no pill prescription to end high stress, low energy, and bad habits. So
that's
I
it.
just want to remind people that you actually have over 20 years of experience in healing and teaching, and you do conference, and you're an author. You've been on most shows, and you have a radio show, and a lot of things going on. But talking about your book, so you think this is really are you referring to the biggest disease of our time? So for you, the high stress, the low energy, and the bad habit is really the issue?
Yeah, I think these are really just symptoms of what the big epidemic is, which is, I guess, to put it in terms that probably your listeners would understand, it's a lack of authenticity. I think that what's happened in the modern world is we've developed a crisis of identity. I mean, so many of us are caught living other people's dreams and stories and limiting what we do with our time and our relationships and our careers because of the force and the constant influence of the world around us. And the problem is, a lot of people think that that sounds like a lot of sort of self-help fluff, like follow your passions and do what be yourself and do what you believe is true. But the truth is, that's not fluff. This kind of congruence is actually a health issue, because if you live that disconnect too long, it'll show up in all kinds of incredible and painful ways.
So how can we know, how can we check the reality? What is the reality check? How can we know that we're not connected?
Well, there's sort of 2 degrees of inspiration deficit. I think the first starts off pretty simple. I think it starts off with a feeling like something's missing, or we're feeling stuck, or common language would be to say something like, I feel like I'm not reflected in my work, or I don't feel myself in my relationship. So it has something to do with when you hear the language of disconnect and feeling stuck. But when it progresses, it looks a lot more intense. It's usually insomnia, digestive issues, bad eating habits, addiction could show up, strong emotional reactions, and all of these things are happening in a way that don't seem to directly relate to what's going on in our lives, even though we may blame our situations or our relationships or our work. Somewhere inside we know that our bad habits, our stress, and our low energy, this has got to be about something more than what's just going on at hand. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and do you think, I mean, why do you think this is happening more now these days than in the past?
Well, I think that we live in very different times. I think that we have 2 extremes occurring that we never had before. One being that we no longer are a part of villages or communities, in the sense that it's harder for us to be complex, full, multifaceted people. We grow up in smaller families, smaller communities, and it's far easier to fall into very simple roles. In a family, you're the smart one, or you're the sick one, or you're the successful one. When we used to be a part of larger communities, you could go sort of 3 houses down or across the village, and you'd be known as something else. Maybe you were the funny one, or maybe you were the artistic one. But we start to become much more homogenous in the way we're identifying ourselves. At the very same moment, we are probably more influenced by the outer world than ever, in the sense that whether it's our phones or our computers or the television, we are constantly being bombarded by very aggressive media and marketing that's basically trying to sell us things based on the idea that we are not enough just the way we are. And that's pretty hard to escape.
I love this conversation. So how did you put this prescription together?
Well, I have to be honest. I know you and I actually had connected some time ago about my first book, Return to the Sacred, which was really one of those books that was kind of an expression of what I wanted to share with the world. This inspiration deficit disorder kind of came in reverse. It really came out of what I felt my clients were asking me. It really came out of what I felt people were asking for in conferences. And this book is just really a collection of the most common answers, tips, tools, and resources that I give the people that I work with. And so it's both, you know, practical in the sense that this is really the material that I've seen help people change their lives. And yet it's also, I guess I'd say what's also neat about it is it does draw together a very, very broad perspective. So whether you come at this with a strong leaning towards psychology or religion or medicine, you don't really have to give up your worldview to embrace the ideas in this book.
Cool. So your book, what I love about your teachings is that they're simple and it's really accessible for everyone, and that's really, really great, because we need to stay practical here. So what are the different steps? Is there any steps, or there's a way to, I mean, is it about first finding out where we're at and then
Absolutely. Yeah, you've got it. So the first half of the book is all about finding out where you are right now. It's sort of a way of doing a personal assessment, and also to help ourselves get clear on how do we get there. What I find is that the clearer people are about why they're feeling stuck and how specifically they're feeling stuck, the easier it is for them to make steps. You know, there's an old saying, a problem well defined is a problem half solved. And I really think that's true. A lot of us, I guess I'd say, acceptance and clarity are two of our biggest roadblocks to begin with. So we deal with that in the first part of the book. And then the second half is just chapters full of traps and tips and so on. But let me give you some examples of some things that people could use who are listening. One of my favorite exercises is to create a lost and found list. So what you want to do on your computer or on a piece of paper is write on one side the word lost, on the other side the word found, and under lost, brainstorm all the things you feel you've lost over the years due to your busyness or your parenting or your career or whatever it is, things you used to love to do. So it could be reading, writing, hiking, golfing. On the other side, under found, you want to write a list of all the things you've found an interest in, but you haven't taken the time to explore. So it could be new topics, new interests, new hobbies, but you haven't yet explored them. You look at these two lists and make a commitment to start doing even just a few of these things on a regular basis, and you'll already start to strengthen that inner essence, that inner vitality that will help you to be more clear to take your next step.
Cool. But how do we deal with when it's really tough? You know, we might be aware that we might be conscious of the challenge and we're dealing in this negative, or, you know, it's really hard. And we make ourselves even more and more and more and more wrong. And it is really hard to snap out of it, even if we're aware of it. So what's the key there, right there?
Well, there's a few things there. So the first thing that I try to always stress wherever I am is that it's okay to get stuck. You know, it's okay to be out of balance. That's part of being a human being on this planet. So, excuse me, the idea of forgiveness and the idea of self-acceptance is key. So start from the place that you are not alone. You are not the first person to have a bad habit, a bad relationship, a bad job, whatever. That's called being normal. So self-acceptance is one. Two is to make sure that you're surrounding yourself with the right kinds of energy and the right kinds of people. And that means that if your friends or your colleagues really are contributing to your problem, or at least aren't supporting you to make changes, you really need to either diminish those relationships or start increasing and strengthening the number of other or new relationships that will help you face that wall. Because you're right, there's a momentum that's very hard to break. And finally, just as another tip, you know, I absolutely recommend making things as concrete as possible, which means if you have to have a little check mark on your calendar for every day you exercise, or you need to give yourself a gold star for every night you don't dive into the chocolate ice cream, you know, whatever works. So get some concrete sort of measurement tools, good community, and a lot of patience and compassion with yourself, and you'll find that'll start to loosen those those really stuck places.